The son-in-law. You're not a dumb guy, Steve. You know how this works. I crumbled beneath the gaze of those hard, cold eyes, crumbling as I always did. The familiar weight of disappointment settled over me, bringing with it the bitter taste of old failures. The 9mm lay on the table in front of me. The matte black finish seemed to absorb the dim light of the room, making it look like a void cut into the scratched wooden surface. I reached out and felt the grip, hard and cold as those eyes. I was breathing fast. My heart pounded, skipping beats, and acted like it wanted to burst from my chest. I could feel my shirt sticking to my back, damp with sweat. I know how it works, I said. Then what's the problem? I don't do this anymore. Because you're too good? No, I have a new life now. People don't change, Steve. You are who you are. You had your chance and you screwed it up. Now it's time to be a man and do the right thing for your family. The old man's fingers drummed against the armrest of his wheelchair, a rhythmic tapping that seemed to count down the seconds of my resistance. I have a wife, a baby. You don't think I know that? She may be your wife, but she's my daughter. I promised her. I'm out of the organization, long ago. The old man laughed, the sound coarse and dry. It echoed off the walls. The organization? You talk like we're the Sopranos. He moved his wheelchair closer and looked at me, his gaze somehow intensifying. The wheels made barely a whisper against the floor, but each inch he closed felt like a vice tightening around my throat. I took you in, made you my son-in-law. Now you'll do this, and soon. Or we may have to examine where your loyalties lie. My pounding heart chilled. The threat was so thinly veiled I saw right through it. Rose, my wife. Molly, my 3-month-old daughter. Would he? His own daughter? Or was the threat directed at me? I wouldn't put anything past this old man. I gripped the gun and slowly pulled it toward me. I held it, feeling an odd familiarity. The weight distribution, the balance point, everything came flooding back. I hadn't held a gun in a long time, but the feel of it, the heft, sent a surge up my spine. Maybe he was right. Maybe I hadn't changed all that much after all. Do this one thing and your problems will be a thing of the past, he said. Molly will get the surgery she needs. You'll move from that hellhole of an apartment. I'll get you a good job, outside of the family business, and you'll never have to kill again. His tone had taken on an almost fatherly quality. I've been doing on my own okay with that last one. And the others? He had me there. Ever since I'd gone against my father-in-law's wishes and left his employ, it had been tough going. The legitimate world had little use for a man whose only real skills involved violence and intimidation. Jobs were scarce. I suspected the old man of poisoning the well of potential employers, and along with that came financial troubles. Every rejection felt like another link in the chain, dragging me back to this moment. Rose brought in some money by taking in a few salon clients, working her magic with scissors and hair dye at our kitchen table, while I pretended not to notice the worry lines that had appeared around her eyes. But the pregnancy had been difficult, and she was just now getting fully back on her feet. Added to that, Molly had arrived with a birth defect that required corrective surgery. The doctors spoke in measured tones about surgical windows and developmental delays, their words as cold and clinical as the hospital bills that arrived daily. But with no money and no insurance, things were looking grim. We lived in a shitty apartment in an even shittier part of town, and now the old man was offering me a way out. Who's the target?" The old man smiled. "I'm not saying I'll do it, just who is it?" But we both knew I was lying. The question itself was capitulation. "Hudson." "Ben Hudson? Why him? He's been with you a long time. 20 years at least, since back when I was still learning the difference between a warning and a promise. And spent a lot of it on the take from those who mean me harm. It's a wonder I'm still alive with that guy passing information." His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw past the frail old man in the wheelchair to the dangerous predator who'd built an empire on fear and respect. "Why not give this job to one of the others? You know Hudson. Good-looking, charismatic, generous. Everyone loves Ben Hudson. I don't think they'd believe he was a rat, and I can't afford a civil war right now. You've been out of the business for a while. You have no loyalty to the guy. That doesn't mean I want to kill him. You don't have to want to, you only have to do it. We all have to do things we don't want to do. I like him myself, but he signed his death warrant by turning on me. If I wasn't stuck in this chair, I'd do it myself." I stood up, still holding the gun. It hung heavily in my hand. "Listen, kid. I know you want to play the part of the reformed, but you're beyond that now. You have a past that would make any judge blanch and scramble for a gavel. You can't escape that. But now you have a chance to do something good for your family. If you want, I'll even give you a new identity. You can take Rose and Molly and disappear anywhere in the world. A fresh start. What's your freedom worth to you, kid?" Rose knew something was wrong, but I deflected her questions by complaining of indigestion and a headache. Her small frown told me she wasn't entirely convinced, but she didn't push. I went to bed early and lay there, pretending to sleep, but replaying the meeting with the old man. I had thought to be rid of him, but now he was back, like a damn cancer that goes into remission only to return more aggressive than before. And he made a persuasive argument. I had committed many questionable acts in my life, enough to send me away for several lifetimes. Killing did not make me squeamish, nor had I experienced a religious epiphany that changed my moral code. I had, however, fallen in love with a woman who abhorred the life I was leading, and now had a child who depended on me. In my previous line of work, death or prison was not exactly assured, but not at all unlikely. Every job had been a roll of the dice, with freedom and life as the stakes. As a single male, the risk had been worth the money and prestige. The adrenaline rush, the respect that came with fear, the comfortable weight of cash in my pocket, it had all seemed like a fair trade. But as a family man, that had all changed. But I hadn't counted on the old man, and how he would take my departure. He saw it as a betrayal, and had done everything possible to make my life difficult. And even though it was mostly his fault, I couldn't help but feel responsible for the hardships my small family now faced. The guilt was a living thing inside me, gnawing at my resolve with sharp, persistent teeth. Perhaps I'd made a mistake in leaving the family business. Rose hadn't counted on this, and Molly certainly didn't deserve it. I slipped out of bed. The mattress springs creaked softly, and I froze. I stood listening and heard dishes rattling in the kitchen as Rose finished cleaning up. I pulled on my clothes, feeling the heavy hardness of the gun nestled in my jacket pocket. I'd been stupid to bring it into the house, and fortunate that Rose hadn't stumbled onto it. I pushed the bedclothes around and shoved a couple of pillows beneath the blankets. It wouldn't fool a close inspection, but might pass a cursory glance. Rose wouldn't be going to bed any time soon. She'd been staying up late to keep a close watch on Molly, not falling asleep until the wee hours. Walking to the dresser, I pulled open the bottom drawer and removed the layers of socks and underwear. I used my fingernail to grip the side of the bottom panel and lifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a .45, a shoulder holster, and a box of ammo. My insurance policy. I'd been given the 9mm, but if I had to do this, I wanted to use my own tools. The gun was wrapped in an oil-stained cloth, protected from moisture and time, maintained out of habit, even when I'd sworn I'd never need it again. I may have left the business, but I wasn't stupid. I pulled out the items and loaded the gun. Each bullet slid into the magazine with a soft click, the sound as familiar as my own heartbeat. Muscle memory guided my hands through the motions. Then I took off my jacket, strapped on the holster, and stuck the gun into it. I put on my jacket again, slipped out of the bedroom, and edged down the hall. I peeked around the corner of the kitchen door to make sure Rose's back was turned. She hummed quietly, and as I listened, she began murmuring the words, "You don't have to say you love me. Just be close at hand." I walked to the door. It squeaked a little on opening, but I was saved by the clang of a metal pot. I paused, listening for one last moment to Rose's soft, high voice. Then I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door and stepped into the cold winter's night. Ben Hudson was right where the old man had said he'd be, sipping whiskey at the Blue Oasis. I went in, sat in the darkest corner I could find, and muttered, "Scotch and soda," to the buxom waitress with a low-cut blouse and the sailor tattoo on her left breast. She had tired eyes and a practiced smile that never quite reached them, the kind of woman who'd seen enough late-night drama to mind her own business. The Blue Oasis was one of the least reputable bars in town, but the most tight-lipped. Even though smoking in bars was no longer allowed, the place still smelled of old tobacco smoke, likely trapped in the old, stained ceiling tiles. The scent mixed with spilled beer, cheap cologne, and something indefinably sour, although that may have just been my mood. I watched Hudson take a swallow from his glass, sitting with the relaxed posture of a man who believed himself untouchable. He was tall and broad-shouldered, too big for me to handle in a physical fight, and that was where the gun came in. He glanced around as if feeling my eyes on him. The gesture was practiced, professional. He was a man who'd survived this long by paying attention to his surroundings. For a moment, I thought he looked right at me, and my heart hammered against my ribs. But then his gaze drifted away, his expression unchanged. His eyes looked a little hazy, and I wondered how long he'd been here and how many drinks he'd had. Perhaps this would be even easier than I thought. A heavy-bottomed glass clunked on the table as the waitress delivered my drink. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the dim bar, and I realized my nerves were making me hypersensitive to every detail. I nodded thanks, and she walked away. I took a drink, my eyes never leaving Hudson. The scotch burned going down, but it helped steady my hands. He tossed back the remainder of his whiskey, dropped money on the bar, and stretched. Sliding off the bar stool, he shrugged into his jacket, rolling his big shoulders. Then he walked for the exit. I let him leave, not wanting to be too obvious. After a few seconds, I stood up and followed. Outside the bar, I pulled my coat around me and looked both ways down the snowy street. No sign of Hudson. I cursed and began walking back toward downtown. There wasn't much in the other direction, and if Hudson had left on foot, there'd be little reason to go that way. I'd taken only a few steps when something big detached from the shadows of an alley and came at me. Hudson. His strong hands wrapped around my neck and squeezed. There was no feeling in the world quite like having the life wrung out of you. It's not like the movies. There's no gradual fading to black. Instead, panic explodes through every cell as your body realizes it's dying. I struggled to get a breath, desperate for oxygen, but Hudson's grip only tightened. My face became hot and swollen. My eyes bulged and my mouth gaped. Stars burst across my vision, and I could hear my pulse thundering in my ears like a freight train. I knew I must look grotesque, but was beyond caring. Vanity dies quickly when survival is at stake. I tried to grab the .45, but my arms were partially pinned by Hudson's body. I went for the gun inside my pocket, and its hard coolness gave me strength. I twisted inside Hudson's hold and brought the gun around. He saw the weapon and had to release his grip to wrestle it from me. I stumbled backward, trying to regain my balance, dragging great, ragged breaths of cold night air into my shrieking lungs. "He said you'd be armed," Hudson said. He tossed the gun aside and flashed that charismatic smile. Then he came at me again, murder in his eyes. I reached inside to my shoulder holster and pulled out the .45, pointed it right at Hudson's face, and pulled the trigger. I took the long way home, wandering through side streets and back alleys. I had no desire to see anyone. When I reached the apartment, I paused at the front door, remembering Rose at the sink singing, "You don't have to say you love me, just be close at hand." I put my hand on the knob, turned it, and opened the door. I stepped inside and waited. The apartment smelled of Rose's perfume and baby powder, domestic scents that should have comforted me, but instead now made my stomach turn. There was a light down the hallway, probably coming from the bedroom. Rose was still awake. She had certainly discovered my deception by now. Then I heard her footsteps on the floor and the bedroom door squeaked. "Is that you?" Rose whispered. "What took so long? I thought he might—" She came around the corner, wearing a sheer negligee and makeup. Her hair was even done. She stopped when she saw me, and her face paled beneath the foundation and blush. Her lips still looked as red as blood. "Steve, I mean, expecting somebody else?" "No, you startled me is all." "He's not coming, Rose. Not now, not ever." She backed up a little, her arms crossing over her breasts. "I don't know what you're talking about." "If you wanted something different, you could have just told me. I left it all behind for you, after all." "Steve." I raised the .45, aimed, and pulled the trigger.